Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, I'm going to first and foremost say this right now. I'm not here to gloat about the fact that the Bears lost last night against the Minnesota Vikings. I have no room for that. We lost 27-13 against the Packers. The Bears lost 27-24 against the Vikings. So first and foremost, I don't have any room to gloat about how the Bears lost last night. They lost. It's not good for them. We all know that. That's not the point of this episode. I actually thought that the Bears, for their first game, in most ways, I thought they did okay. I wouldn't say they did good. I wouldn't say they did great. But I thought they did okay for their first game. Rather, what this episode is about is to bring into clarity how there are so many people, Lions fans and those outside of that alike, who are wanting to say that, oh, the reason why the Lions offense sucked is because of John Morton. That's the reason for this episode. And the reason why we're talking about the Bears is because, well, Ben Johnson is the former offensive coordinator. So it would make sense that if we're going to have a conversation about this, we're going to have to do a little bit of compare and contrast between how John Morton did with the offense for the Lions against the Packers, which have a great defensive coordinator. They have a really good defensive unit, versus Ben Johnson against the Minnesota Vikings having a great defensive coordinator and also having a really good defensive unit. Because it's like, okay, if you want to do as close to a straight-up comparison as possible, that's the best way to do it. So let's understand something here. Just at the first viewpoint, okay, yeah, the Bears scored 24 points, which that is 11 more than what the Lions scored. Okay, so yeah, they got more points. The Bears also had more yardage. I think they had 71 more total yards than the Lions. Not necessarily a whole hell of a lot more, but again, it's more. But if you really want to start breaking all this down and you actually want to start taking a look at it for the actual measure of what it truly means, you have to take a look at it in a deep, in-depth perspective. So let's first and foremost take a look at this at the very top of the whole thing. If we're going to actually want to talk about this, we have to start with how the Bears offense did under Johnson in their first game versus obviously Morton in the Lions' first game. And that all starts with the quarterback comparison, because they're the leaders of the offense. How they perform is a true indicator, or a very close indicator, of how the overall offense is going to perform, right? That's supposedly the logic. That's supposedly how people will present it. Well, let's take a look at how Caleb Williams did last night against the Vikings. Caleb Williams' stats last night against the Vikings, he was 21 of 35, 60 completion percentage rate, 210 yards for 6 an average a throw, 1 passing touchdown, no interceptions, had an 86.6 passer rating with a 63.8 QBR. That's not bad, but again, it's not necessarily good. And the reason why it's not necessarily good is because, again, the completion percentage is nowhere close to where it needs to be. It needs to be at least 65% or better. And then on top of that, the average was pretty low, but here's the reason why it was low. The reason why it was low is not necessarily because the Bears weren't trying to throw the ball down the field. They definitely were trying to do that. The problem was that they just couldn't make it work. Plus, on top of that, again, the passer rating, as we're about to see, is very, very similar to Jared Goff. Speaking of Goff, as I just said, let's take a look at his stats from, again, when he played the Packers on Sunday. When we take a look at Jared Goff's stats against the Packers, Goff was 31 of 39 for 79.5 completion percentage rate, 225 passing yards, 5.8 in average a throw, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, had an 88.6 passer rating with a 52.8 QBR. Okay, so there's your quarterback head-to-head comparison in terms of how Caleb Williams did under Johnson, the supposed offensive guru, the offensive wonder kid, the offensive know-it-all, versus how Jared Goff did underneath John Morton. So right off the bat, we're going to see something very clear. And I'm going to give Williams his due. Williams does have a higher QBR, which I will say this. Ben Johnson and the Bears fans, they can definitely hang their hat on. However, though, I will say this. The QBR is a total culmination of what the quarterback is doing, which also includes the rushing component, of which last night, Caleb Williams was the Bears' lead rusher. So that does factor in. But if you want to talk about just straight up passer rating, the passer rating, once again, Goff is better than Caleb Williams. It's not by a whole hell of a lot, but it is still better. In fact, if I go back really quickly, yeah, it's 2 points better. So yeah, Caleb Williams had a better QBR. That's definitely something that the Bears fans and Ben Johnson can kind of hang their hat on. So yeah, overall, their quarterback didn't do too bad last night. But here's what I will say. The Bears' passing attack again struggled to find consistency from Caleb Williams. And the best way to find that answer is, again, how high was Jared Goff's completion percentage rate versus Caleb Williams' completion percentage rate? It was 20 points higher. Literally, almost 20 points higher. 19.5 percentage points. That right there tells me something. That even though Ben Johnson, the supposed quarterback whisperer, even the supposed offensive wonder kid, even the offensive guru, he still cannot get Caleb Williams to consistently put the ball exactly where it needs to. Because let me put it to you this way. Had Caleb Williams had the completion percentage rate that Jared Goff had, I'd be willing to bet that we'd be having a little bit of a different conversation or no conversation at all. Furthermore, let's also consider the fact that the Bears, like the Detroit Lions, they didn't exactly get much from their running backs. Because again, when you take a look at how DeAndre Swift did last night with the Bears, he ran the ball 17 times for 58 yards for 3.1 a carry. Now, that's still better than what the Lions got from Monty and Gibbs. But that's not because Swift is a better running back than Monty or Gibbs. That has everything to do with what everybody's been talking and highlighting about all weekend as far as the Lions' offensive line. It's still learning, it's still building chemistry, it's still trying to find its rhythm. Because if you take a look at PFF, the Lions only had one single run blocker that had a 65 run block grade. That was it. They only had one that was better than that. And that was obviously, of course, Sewell, because he's our best run blocker. Everybody else did not do so well. In fact, all but 2 had higher than a 60 run block grade. The only other guy that had higher than 60 was Tate Ratledge. But Ratledge had the worst pass blocking grade out of all the offensive linemen of the Detroit linemen. So yeah, you know what? Small consolation that he got the second best run blocking grade out of all Detroit linemen. But the pass blocking grade was the worst. And by worst, I mean it was terrible. It was I think 36. So not good at all for Tate Ratledge. That's just speaking the facts. Which, when you take a look at how the Lions pass blocking did, it's kind of interesting how I said that the Lions left tackle, right tackle, and also center, they were able to do exactly what they needed to do because all 3 of them had pretty much a 70 or higher pass blocking grade, which Mahogany and Ratledge, theirs were bringing up the dead rear. And when I mean the dead rear, I mean they were so far behind it wasn't even funny. So think about that. Pretty much all of your offensive linemen couldn't get run blocking going, and when it came to the pass blocking grade, the only ones that actually did well were the veterans. Man, oh man, it sounds like I actually was right about that when I was talking about stuff after the game. You know what? It seems like if we get those guards up to speed, everything should then fall into place. But let's put this into a further context here. these pass blocking and run blocking grades and understanding the rushing stats and the passing stats from the Bears, this is important because, let me put it to you this way. If Johnson was such the great offensive coordinator, which everybody's claiming he is, also with all the interior offensive linemen that they signed this offseason and brought in, because let's remember something here, they traded for 2 offensive interior linemen and signed 1. So their interior offensive line is supposedly way, 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 way better than ours because, oh, that's right, it's veteran, it's experienced, everybody's on the same page, right? But here's what the problem is. You would think that with all of that, you would think that having all offseason, all training camp to work with the quarterback that everyone was going to say is better suited for him, why then aren't the stats reflecting that? The reason why is, as I have said before, Ben Johnson was not the reason that this offense ran the way it did. And last night was a perfect example of that. Now again, some are going to want to highlight very, very quickly that the Lions only scored 13 points, whereas the Bears scored 24, and that I have no room to talk. But I disagree. Because again, the Bears had a better offensive interior line, which means, okay, you should be able to do more, not only in terms of running the ball, getting that play action working, which obviously Ben Johnson is very, very familiar with, but also getting the actual passing attack working. And again, let's also compare this. The Bears went up against a great offensive coordinator in freaking the Vikings last night because, oh, that's right, they went up against the former Miami Dolphins head coach, which right now his head is, right now the name was escaping me, but it's Brian Flores. We went up against Halfley with the Packers the other day, which everyone is saying that he's going to soon become a head coach. So it's like, okay, we went up against we had 2 great defensive coordinators for both the Bears and the Lions, but yet the Bears only scored 11 more points than us. So you would think that if everything is actually falling into place as far as what the narratives have been, as far as how Ben Johnson is oh so good, oh so great, that the Bears should have been able to score a lot more than just 11 points more than what the Lions did. You would also think that they'd also be able to throw the ball a lot better than what we did, which they didn't. You would also think they'd be able to run the ball a lot better than what we did, which they didn't. Again, if you realistically want to be fair about all of it, they did marginally better. Marginally, and I mean barely marginally. Yeah, they did marginally better in running the ball. But again, the reason why their running numbers are better is because Caleb Williams was able to pick up more yardage than freaking DeAndre Swift. If you take that out, then you know what? It's not that much different. And again, if you put all that into perspective with then what the Lions had, oh, that's right. We had poor blocking in the interior, which means we can't get the run game going. Which, oh, if there's poor blocking in the interior, the exterior is then going to try to compensate, which means that's going to affect how they play, which then means now the entire offensive line is affected, which I just said yesterday. Which now if you don't have good run blocking, you can't set up the play action. Which if you can't set up the play action, now you can't get the entire offense working. Which is exactly what I said yesterday. It literally is a domino effect. It's like, hey, this domino falls, then that domino falls. After that domino falls, the next one falls. It all plays after itself. So if you correct that one problem back here, everything else should correct itself. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I'm not. That's exactly what Dan Campbell said. So think about it. Once you get those offensive linemen up to speed, everything should then, quote unquote, correct itself. But that's the problem here. The Bears' offensive line, it has that veteran experience. It has those veteran players. Because think about it. They signed the best center supposedly in free agency. They got 2 of the best guards that were available by trading for Jonah Jackson and trading for, I think his name is Joe Thuney, that they got from freaking the Chiefs. So they've got all the guys they need on the interior. But yet, again, their passing attack wasn't better than ours, and their rushing attack in terms of the running back was only marginally better. Yet despite that, as I just stated, Goff still outperformed Williams in terms of passer rating, in terms of yards, and especially in terms of completion percentage, which let's understand what that means. That means that Goff understands the offense. That means Goff knows exactly what he's doing. That means Goff is in a position to actually do his job immensely better as a quarterback than what Caleb Williams was able to do, despite the fact that, oh, wait for it, Ben Johnson was not here. Oh my God. Small wonder of the world. So let's just look at it from that perspective, because that's rather important. And then let's include this little perspective on top of it, because I know there's been a lot of Lions fans who've been like, well, why didn't Dan Campbell put the players out there in the preseason? Why didn't the starters play in the preseason? Oh, let's talk about that one for a minute, because wait a minute here. The Bears actually did play their starters in the preseason. They did play them. So you would think that since they played their starters in the preseason, they should be further along according to that logic. Because since the Lions didn't, that would mean that the Bears offense should have scored well more than 11 more points than the Lions. They should have put up way more than just 71 more yards than the Detroit Lions. But yet they didn't. So what does that tell you? It tells you that playing the starters in preseason only is going to give you, at best, marginally better results. So are you going to really risk your starters getting injured in a meaningless preseason game for only marginally better results? Let that one sit around in your cranium for a minute. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. The Lions converted more third downs. Granted, they had a lower third down conversion percentage rate, but they still converted more. They still converted more total third downs than the Bears last night. And they also converted more fourth downs and had a higher fourth down conversion percentage rate, because they had a 75% conversion percentage rate on fourth down and converted 3 of them, whereas the Bears converted none. And again, let's also put this into perspective. The Bears had 13 drives last night. 13. The Lions only had 9. That means the Lions have 4 drives less in which they could work with. Oh, now somebody's going to say, oh, well, that's because the Bears didn't have the same amount of time of possession. We held on to the ball way longer. Check your stats again. The Bears had the ball just as long as we did. So think about that. That means that because the Bears had the ball that many times and had about the same amount of time of possession as we did, a lot of their drives were very, very short. They were not able to sustain their drives. Whereas the Lions, on the other hand, they were able to sustain their drives. What was ultimately the reason why we couldn't score? Because when we get to the red zone, we sputtered out. We also did have a turnover in the red zone, so let's not forget about that. But when we were getting down into the red zone, we weren't actually able to convert and get those points that we needed to. That was a lot of the reason why we were not able to score more points. Plus, on top of that, like I said, we had 4 less drives than the Bears did. So again, point of the matter is, if Johnson was such the wizard that he is supposedly supposed to be, with a better offensive line right out the gate than what the Lions had, also having the same, I would say, skill talent at wide receiver, because, okay, you know what, you've got let's see here, you got DJ Moore, you've got also Luther Bundren, you've also got, Roma Dunze, so it's like, hey, you've got 3 top quality wide receivers. You've also got 2 top quality tight ends. So you've got the same skill guys on the outside that the Lions have in terms of talent overall, if you want to really argue that point. But yet you still only put up 11 more points than we did, and you still only put up 71 more yards. But here's where it really gets kind of interesting for me. I'm not at all going to say that we're going to curb stomp the Bears. Again, I have no room for that. I can't say that. I will not say that. But to me, again, it's rather interesting that with all of the offensive talent that supposedly the Bears had and that Ben Johnson had at his fingertips and was supposedly going to show the entire world that he was the reason that the Lions' offense was the way it was, you only put up 11 more points, you only put up 71 more yards, your quarterback still performed less than Jared Goff did in terms of the actual passing statistics and the passing measurements. But here's what really is going to stick in his craw. I can guarantee you this is going to be a big problem for Ben Johnson. They had, quite literally, 12 penalties last night for 127 penalty yards. That's undisciplined as hell. Yeah, the Lions were undisciplined too. They had 7 penalties for 40 yards, and then obviously there were problems with execution. But when you have 12 penalties for 127 yards, that's going to kill you. My whole point with this episode is this, just to sum it all up. Give Morton the chance to actually get the rest of the coaches to get the players up to speed, so then that way we can actually say and see what we actually have. Because I'm going to tell you this right now, we have a good offense. It just needs time to build that chemistry, just needs that time to find its groove, just needs to find that time to get its rhythm going. So before you're saying that he's the actual problem, Look back at what happened with the Bears last night as far as how the Bears did not perform up to the standard that everybody thought they were going to perform to. Blew a 14-point plus lead in the final, the final quarter or so against the Vikings. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. If Ben Johnson was clearly the reason, then they should have won that game no problem. Absolutely should have won the game no problem. Especially with a rookie quarterback, in essence, on the other sideline, they should have won no problem. My point of the matter is this. It's clear that Ben Johnson was not the reason that the Lions offense performed the way that it did. He was merely one cog in an entire machine. Because if that was truly the case, Goff should have literally fell off a damn cliff against the Packers. But he didn't. He performed way better than Caleb Williams did. And then on top of that, the Bears offense only performed marginally better than the Lions offense did despite all the problems it had. That's my point. So keep that all in mind. But anyway, I've said my point. I've made my piece. So I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. I also encourage y'all to do this. If you like the content, I hope to gain your subscription. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you've not yet had a chance to do so, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I hope y'all enjoyed the content. Hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.